Meeting to order. Councilmember Phil Jennings will bring our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please stand?
Let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for thy many blessings. We give thanks, O Lord, for our families and our dear friends and the happiness that they bring to our hearts each day. We ask that you be with us as we conduct the business of the city. Lead, guide, and direct us that the decisions we make might glorify your name. In the name of your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. For it's in his name we ask. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've invited the candidates for state representative from both District 91 and District 98 to be with us this evening. We thought it would give them the opportunity to make a few general comments and then the opportunity for you to perhaps get a little better acquainted with them. We have some general questions prepared that we will ask each candidate after they have made a general comment. And we would like to, we have an official timekeeper, our City Secretary Helen Harris. We'd like to ask the candidates to please limit your general comments to about 3 minutes, and then you'll each have 5 minutes to answer the questions. So we shall begin with our incumbents, and that would be from District 91, State Representative Bill Carter. Thank you for being here.
Where do you want me? Here?
Right there, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it is a pleasure to be here tonight with the council. And the election is just around the corner. I know early voting started today, so this is a great time to put this up higher on the agenda so that people will have an opportunity to hear more about the races as they are. I've been in the House since 1984, and as most of you know, I did have all of Haltom City until we redistricted in 1990, and then it changed, and now I have just east of 377. And but it's always been a pleasure working with the council and the members of all of the citizens in Haltom City. If you'll recall the great fun we had when we tried to get the railroad bridge widened, and we finally got that done, and then you got to be the all-American city, and I had a chance to go to Washington, D.C. and be with you when you were recognized for that, and I guess you could say we just come a long way here. But I want to throw in just a little bit about what I'm doing as your state representative. I was named chairman last session of the Urban Affairs Committee. And the Urban Affairs Committee handles just about anything that has to do with cities, with the mass transit area, with low-income housing, taxing housing tax credits. And so we probably will be seeing a whole lot of each other in the course of the session. The Urban Affairs Committee will get probably 150 or 200 bills that have to do with something involving the cities or housing or so forth. And one of our biggest issues in the area of housing is the fact that our affordable housing stock just keeps getting less and less of the amount of affordable houses that we need. And the population projections that we've seen done by Texas A&M say that by 2030 we're going to have 30 million Texans, and the average wage is not going to be a whole lot more than it is now. So when you consider that if the average wage is under $50,000, it kind of puts a real squeeze on somebody to buy a $150,000 or $200,000 house to live in, so they don't have any spendable income left. So we're working with innovative new building products, innovative new methods of financing, and we're going to be working with you in those areas because we got to find some answers to this affordable housing issue. And one area is more volunteer labor in the pool. There's some youth works programs going in Austin and in Dallas and some of the areas around the country where you're being able to take young people that have dropped out of school, people on probation and parole, and give them these new panels and let them build new houses. So look forward to working with you. Also serve on public safety and have all these years. So we'll do a lot of work with you on public safety issues also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Dr. Monty Mitchell, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Madam Secretary, and Councilman. My name is Dr. Monty Mitchell, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and my family. My grandfather did 35 years of business in Haltom City as Mr. Dick Mitchell from Texas Signs Incorporated, and I'm glad to come back to Haltom City. I'm a 44-year-old native of Fort Worth. I'm a fifth-generation Texan and have lived in District 91 for 10 years, over 20 years of public service, and I'm a member of Emmanuel Church in Fort Worth. I'm an active Republican since 1977 and a member of the county, state, and national Republican Party. I'm a Lincoln Council member, Tarrant County Republican Party Judicial Review Committee member, and campaigned for Governor Bush in 1994 and 1998. I have the unique privilege of being a physician and surgeon, an attorney at law, and a commercial and family mediator. I'm board certified in emergency medicine, family medicine, and board eligible in emergency medicine. I was emergency medical director for 3 years and the Tarrant County Jail surgeon, which was a unique experience. I was a member of the administrative committee at Christ for the Nations, scholarship committee at SMU, American Heart Association member, and member of the Texas Medical Association and the Texas Osteopathic Medical Association. The reason that I'm here today primarily is to let you get to know me, but also to state some of the main issues in our campaign. One is that I believe that we're both eminently qualified. You really can't say anything about Mr. Carter's 15 years tenure in the Texas legislature. As well, I believe that my educational process has uniquely trained me for this position. However, I think that I can identify 4 major areas. One is at a Republican club meeting at Espinosa's, Mr. Carter was asked whether or not, if the Republicans had a majority because of the redistricting situation in the next legislature, if he would support a Republican for Speaker of the House. And Mr. Carter said that he could not necessarily do that, that he would have to vote for the person that was best qualified. In addition, Mr. Carter on his literature said he's conservative, whereas he's been voted the 4th most liberal Republican in the House of Representatives by the Texas Eagle Forum, Young Conservatives of Texas, and Free Market PAC. I believe that Mr. Carter's not listening to the people of the district, but to lobbyists and special interest groups, golf games, trips funded by lobbyists, and so forth. But the main issue, I think, and the one most important for you today, is Mr. Carter-sponsored House Bill 1614. And that House bill basically would relinquish right-of-way money to the cities and would have cost a city like, say, North Richland Hills, for instance, approximately $3 million, and would have increased our property tax by approximately $150 per household. And I think that would have been a major problem. What I'm trying to tell you today is that if you elect me your state representative, I will be happy and fortunate to work with the cities in whatever way possible to decrease taxes and decrease government bureaucracy. And if anybody does crime, they also do the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. From District 98, our incumbent state representative, Vicki Truitt. Hello.
Thank you very, very much for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm Representative Vicki Truitt, the incumbent state representative for the 98th House District. And I'd just like to say to you that I may office in Southlake because that is closer to the population center of my district. And I may live in Keller, But I remember when Buddy's sold hardware and we picked up livestock feed off of the loading dock on the south side of the building. I remember the first inside movie I ever attended was Vincent Price's The Pit and the Pendulum at the Haltom Theater when my dad was getting a haircut next door. I grew up in Smithfield, and there wasn't much to do in Smithfield, so I remember a lot of Saturday nights at the Belknap Drive-In. I remember the log cabin. I remember the restaurant at the Ramada Inn. I remember the very first time I voted was at the Haltom Recreation Center in 1972, the year I graduated from high school. I could go on and on. My point is that my roots are very deep in Haltom City. I care about the people who live here, from the elderly at the senior center to the kids in the Tiger Boxing League. I care because of my past, and I care because I'm supposed to care. I'm your state representative. And not the least of which I care because my daughter and my son-in-law and 2 of my grandchildren live in Haltom City. I've been in office approximately 1 year, and I told you before I was elected that I would be here for you. I hope you'll remember the town hall meeting I hosted with the Texas Municipal League. Some of you were there. I hope you'll remember the meeting I facilitated between the Texas Department of Transportation to encourage the acceleration of the highway project expanding 820 between 26 and 35. I hope you'll remember my pushing TxDOT along to consummate the agreement for the access road on 820. I hope you'll remember my stop on my district-wide coffee tour at the Bluebonnet Cafe on Haltom Road. And I hope you'll remember my attendance at the Greater Northeast Tarrant County Chamber of Commerce meetings, even when it wasn't campaign time. I hope you'll remember that you haven't had to come find me. I hope you'll remember that throughout the year I've made it a point to ask, what can I do to help you? Not only as a city, but some of you have come to me individually, or your spouses have. I've been interested and I've been responsive to your issues. We remember the past, but we live in the present, and I've tried to be present for the people of Haltom City. It's time to vote for the past, the present, and the future. I'm honored to have the opportunity to represent you in the Texas House and to have the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate for District 98, Nancy Moffett.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here. As I thought about coming over here, it was kind of like, okay, now what can I say that hasn't been said already? My legislative experience is that I was in the Texas House from 1993 to 1999, and that these road projects that Vicki's talking about were started during my tenure. I worked very closely with Gary Larson as mayor and with the members of the council during that time. Many of you know. We worked on economic issues. My background is in city management. I have a master's of public administration, and I was in city management for over 5 years, so I truly do understand issues that face the city. And I think that's very important because keeping taxes down and looking at providing services are something that are very crucial. I've been very active in Haltom City during my tenure. I have relatives here also. My great uncle lives here. In fact, he had his 90th birthday party on Sunday. He's lived in Haltom City for over 40 years. So I'm going to sort of, I guess, leave to the questions and answers, but I will say that I do believe that my role as a state representative is to assist you all in keeping taxes low and providing quality services, and to whatever that can be between state and municipal government. I don't believe that the role of government is to enact laws that cause your hard-earned tax dollars to go to subsidize millionaires who do not pay one single red cent in property taxes. So, like I said, I am Nancy Moffett. I am a candidate, and I would like your support.
Thank you. If I may call you up one at a time, and we'll do these questions in order. State Representative Carter. What is your opinion of the sales tax applying to the sale of goods and services over the internet?
Well, that's a good question, one
thought
that
so, too.
everybody's trying to find an answer to. I have worked both at the state level and the national level with organizations trying to find the answer to that issue. And as you know, it's a very complicated issue, and there are a lot of people that are working on it, trying to come up with an answer. One of the answers is that there'd be some kind of new third-party group that would be established, and then that group then would collect the taxes that on purchases that anybody made over the internet, and then resend those back to the states and to the cities. That's one method that has been proposed at the national level. Another one is that try to come up with a standardized sales tax so that it would apply the same in all jurisdictions. One of the problems is that it's so complicated by the fact that different cities, different products and everything are handled differently under the sales tax issue. So that plus the fact that the Supreme Court has ruled that if there must be nexus in order to collect, and that goes back to the catalog sales and whatnot, and there is another case that's coming through that may have a bearing on that, and Congress is looking at the issue. So I wish I had the specific answer, the solution to the big problem, but it's just something that we'll have to work through.
What is your opinion?
My opinion is that we will come to some kind of a consensus where we might be able to get, and I don't want to give up states' rights in the process. I don't want Congress telling us what we got to do. So the American Electronics Association and all of these different organizations and companies and the governors' groups and all of these are trying to come up with this consensus position that where we can arrive at an amount, and that would apply the same all over the United States, but the states would be the ones that would determine whether or not they wanted to accept or deny that.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Mitchell? Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I understand the question fully.
All right.
Thank you. I oppose the sales tax on internet goods, specifically because I believe it's government intrusion into our private rights. I mean, when is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? I believe that we must have a nexus of freedom somewhere in America, and the internet is it. And thank you.
Thank you. State Representative Truitt, would you like the question repeated?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That's all right. I think I remember it. Let me just say this. Before Jim and I moved out to Keller 8 or 9 years ago, Jim was the mayor of Richland Hills, one of your neighboring cities. And I have a perspective of small government, or of city government, that I suppose some don't have. And I understand what sales tax means to cities. As far as the internet is concerned, I'm not sure how we get a grasp on something that is of the magnitude of the internet and how you facilitate taxation on the internet. But I will say to you that I recognize that I think that what we need is a level playing field. that I don't want to risk the futures of mom and pop operations or of local businesses I don't want to facilitate the internet and commerce at the expense of local business and industry.
Thank you very much.
Is that it?
That's it for now. Nancy, would you like the question repeated?
No. I agree with Vicki on the fact that I realize how important sales tax is to cities. I also agree that this is a monumental issue into how do we get our hands around this issue. At this point, I would have to say, though, that you're not going to like my answer, but I don't support internet sales tax. But that's only to say, with the amount of knowledge that I have at this point, if there's a way that we can come in and do a level playing field so that all internet companies are the same nationwide, so that all cities across the entire nation will benefit, then I definitely would take a look at it.
Thank you. Just to be fair, we'll start the next question with Dr. Mitchell. Traffic congestion continues to be a problem in the Metroplex. What can you, if elected, do to ensure that our area receives its fair share of TxDOT funding?
A good question. I spoke with a member of TxDOT, Charles Conrad, district engineer, and knowing that the Metropolitan Planning Organization feeds into the RTC and has to go through technical committees and so forth, I believe that the way that cities are equalized based on funds for transportation needs within those counties basically come out of the MMF and National Highway Mobility Fund. The only way to do that is to prioritize these particular needs within the state, and that is done at the present time through doing a priority level system. I think that the way we get to those funds, however, should be through decreasing government bureaucracy by decreasing the cost of government and funneling those costs, the savings of those costs, into the highway and transportation system. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. State Representative Truitt? No, I want you next.
Alrighty then.
Have I confused you? Good.
Let me just begin by saying that because of the kind of interaction that I've tried to promote with my constituents, I know that transportation and mobility are issues that are at the top of the priority list as far as my constituents are concerned. From feedback I've gotten from my coffees, from just call-ins from the survey that I did, I know that that's a top priority. And let me say that even before I was sworn into office, after I was elected 2 years ago, and before I took office in January of 1999, either I or a representative of mine began to attend Regional Transportation Commission meetings, and we have attended every single RTC meeting since I was elected and even before I took office. You all know what role I've played on Loop 820, on expanding 377 up to between Keller and 170, on widening 156, on 114, on Highway 26, to about just a few weeks ago, I helped lead a delegation to Austin to appear before the Texas Transportation Commission about a regional project that will help everyone in this region address the congestion at the funnel. I think it's important to know that I have tried to cultivate the kind of relationships with the Commission and with the Texas Department of Transportation that will produce results for the people of my district.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nancy?
I definitely think that the role of a state legislator is to work with the cities and with TxDOT, but I also think that it's very important to have a more senior member on. There are no funds that come into the district without appropriations. So the funds need to be appropriated and then they need to be allocated, and it's two separate functions. The appropriations, the dollars, the allocation for the highway department. So therefore, I think a more senior member, which if I go back, I retain my seniority, and I will have 4 terms, so I would be very eligible for appropriations. The other thing that I think is important to say is that as we interact with TxDOT, we need to understand the process very well, and that TxDOT looks at and talks to legislators who they feel have more influence in the legislature. Now, y'all are we're all politicians. You know, if you look at the federal level, if you look at the state level. So it is important to realize that is a very key factor. Like I said, I worked with Haltom City officials on many of the projects that are underway now, and it does require someone to take action on your behalf, and I would be more than happy to do that. I've shown that I will.
Thank you. Representative Carter?
Thank you. Now, I feel like that I'm in a very good position to do more for this issue as well as a lot of other issues because of the fact that in the 16 years that I have been in Austin, I have been able to form a lot of coalitions with other members. And when you get into these issues where you're negotiating for a fixed amount of dollars, you've got to be able to work together. I think it's one significant point that we recently got about $8 million into the area on the projects for improving bicycle and pedestrian facilities, landscaping and scenic beautification, historical preservation, and the environmental mitigation. Wes Held is a good friend of mine. He was worked very closely with him when he was the district engineer. Steve is a good friend, and I've worked closely with him. And the transportation overall, we're going to have to move more to some tollways in order to get the east-west corridors opened up in our area. And we have set up the mechanics and the format for those tollways that can be come about. I also have proposed and will continue to propose that one of the possible solutions is on our interstates, 35 and 10 and 45, would be to put an Autobahn tollway in the right-of-way out to the side of those highways and restrict it only to automobiles so that you don't have to have 15 inches of concrete to hold the weight. Those would be able to pay for themselves very quickly, and we'd have another situation like I-30 where we'd have free transportation in a very short period of time. And I think that's a viable idea, and TxDOT is looking at some possibilities there. Another area that we need to work with in our immediate cities is to make sure that all of our streets come out together. And I think that that the North Texas Council of Governments and all the cities have been working very well in those regards, and I've seen more and more cooperation of trying to move this traffic, because if we don't do something, we're going to be gridlocked, and so we all need to work together on it.
Thank you very much. Representative Truitt? This is rather a long question, so please, if you'd like it repeated at any time, let me know. The Texas Natural Resources Conservation Commission, in conjunction with the Council of Governments, have prepaid an air quality improvement program for the Metroplex. It now appears that this plan will not be approved by the EPA. What do you believe can be done by the state to solve air quality problems in North Texas without crippling the area's economy?
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why are you saying that you think it won't be approved by the EPA?
Everything points to that. Would you like to comment further?
That's the impression that we have, at least, is that the EPA has some real reservations. And I've read some newspaper articles to the effect that the EPA has some reservations, at least with parts of the program.
I attended a briefing less than 2 weeks ago in Austin. The EPA was present. I didn't pick up on anything indicating that they were not open and receptive to our state implementation plan that, as you know, was we completed the public comment section of that. The plan itself was finalized in December of 1999 and was available for public comment. There were public hearings held in the Dallas-Fort Worth area during January, and I believe February the 14th was the final date for hearings about that. I don't know that they're not receptive, and I'm not trying to dispute what you're saying, but there's been no notification through my office to the contrary of what I heard a couple of weeks ago. As you know, the EPA has set a standard of 0.12 parts per million of the particulates, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area is currently sitting at approximately 1.25 parts per million, so we are in a non-attainment zone. But I'm just, as a seventh-generation Texan, I'm just of the pioneering spirit enough to think that with local control, that there's nothing we can't do. If they give us the guidelines, it's going to be costly, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt each and every one of us. It's going to, we're going to have to sacrifice, in other words, individuals and businesses, but we do need to clean up our air, and if we all work together and we have some standardized guidelines and we don't need to be dictated to by Washington, but if they will give us some uniform guidelines, this state and its people can figure out how to handle the problem.
The other thing that concerns me is normally they don't give you much of a time limit. They give you a very crunched up time limit.
Right.
What do you think? What do you think of that? Do you think they're going to give us sufficient amount of time to be able to plan?
Well, the plan is to be implemented in May of 2000. It's to be submitted to the EPA by April 2000 and to be implemented by May of 2000. There are two kinds of sanctions they can hit us with. One has to do with transportation funding, and the window on that, I believe, is 24 months, and the other kind has to do with putting a halt to new construction and expanded construction, and the window of implementation of those sanctions is an 18-month window. We have to demonstrate that, well, first of all, the plan has to be accepted, or those timelines start, or the clock starts ticking. Or if we don't show the proper progress, I believe 2007 is by when we must be in compliance, or those will kick in. But there's a lot at stake here. That there's no doubt about that, and I'm hopeful that with our governor becoming president, we'll have a little more clout with the EPA than we do now.
Just as a matter of curiosity, they tell us that we have to clean up our air, and yet at the same time we have the DFW airport, and we have Texas Motor Speedway, where people sit in line for hours and hours with the cars running and the emissions going into the air.
Right.
Those two things don't seem to mix to me. Clean up your air, but we're going to do all this.
Right. Two points on that. One is that at the hearing I attended in the briefing I attended in Austin, I asked the question: is the FAA at the table on these on setting these standards and with participation? The answer was basically no, they're not. So I think the Federal Aviation Administration must come to the table and set some specific guidelines for aircraft. And DFW will need to be a player in that way. And I believe the people at DFW are participating. I know they are, but the FAA could do more to help the situation. And secondly, the catch-22 we face with, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? If the feds cut off highway funding, then you exacerbate our problem of traffic congestion, which makes the air pollution problem even worse. So we need to keep the traffic flowing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nancy?
Which one of those questions do you want me to answer? But let me just say,
Start with solving the air quality.
I have never known EPA to withhold, the federal government to withhold funds to Texas on any guidelines, period. I don't anticipate they will now. I think that that's used as a scare tactic a lot. I've worked a lot with the EPA. When I was with the City of Denton, I was in the Air Quality Division. That was sort of my bailiwick at that time, and that's when Collin and Denton County were being drawn into the non-attainment area. Tarrant and Dallas were already in it, and they were bringing in Collin and Denton County. But I also look at the car inspections, in that when we were going to do the centralized inspections and we stood up as a state and said, excuse me, but we're not going to do this, they did not withhold funds. So I truly believe that that is nothing more than a scare tactic the federal government is using. I think that the Texans would be totally up in arms, as would any state. I definitely think we also need to be looking at air quality. It's very important. My dad has asthma and emphysema, so yes, it needs to be addressed. The part that needs to be addressed most comes from vehicles, because 60% or over 60% of our air pollution comes from the VOCs out of vehicles. So obviously the faster we could get our roads built, for congestion purposes, the better our air quality is going to be.
Thank you very much. Representative Carter?
Thank you. I also attended that same meeting that Vicki did in Austin, and I've attended a number up in this area. As you know, on our Public Safety Committee, we did do a lot of work as far as the auto emission problems were concerned. But one of the things I think is a possible solution area is we're looking at new sciences all along. As time goes on, the science that EPA is basing their limitations on and their restrictions on has been proven in many areas not to be an accurate situation of what is really there. So I think one thing is we may see a change in what is this 0.05, 0.03 or whatever, and nitrous oxide as an example. There are some new studies now that show that is very, very important to plant life and trees. In areas of high nitrous oxide concentrations grow 42% faster than where they don't have any nitrogen oxide. So, but the solution that I think we can do something about is synchronizing our traffic. I want to give you credit for the fact that most of the traffic lights in Haltom City are pretty well synchronized, and you can move along at a pretty steady pace. And we need to do more of that in the other areas. We need to do more out around the racetrack. We're working with the Department of Public Safety and all of the cities in that area, and we've had a number of meetings to try to come up with some better solutions. 114 being finished will make a lot of difference, but we got to figure out better ways to move the traffic around the schools. When we moms are having to sit there for 30, 40 minutes idling their cars. We need to figure some better way. If we got a traffic congestion area like we do up here at 26 and 820, we need to have the officers out there working those lights, moving that traffic, and anything that we can do along those lines will be better. We're going to need to have more HOV lanes on our freeways. That has proven to move traffic much better in the Houston area, but it's going to take everybody working together. They got the new sniffers out that you can pick out these cars that are really putting out the bad pollutants as they go onto the freeways and whatnot. We need to identify those. We need to come up with some kind of new innovative way to replace cars for people that can't afford to replace them themselves, that are the real bad polluters. And so it's going to take everybody.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchell?
Well, these have been some really wonderful answers. My answer to the question that you presented is based in two parts. One, what can we do in a present situation, and what can we do in the future? Presently, I think that the problem is caused from several factors. One is traffic, like has been aforementioned. In addition, I think that air quality and industry is another factor. And as far as your question goes, as I understand it, is what do we do if the EPA has a problem with these specifications and these things that were passed? Bottom line is I think that we would have to, as a community, work together, one, for enforcement of the pre-existing EPA regulations, and two, I think that we would have to work together to have free flow of traffic and air quality regarding some other futuristic kind of expectations that I might have. One would be to, and these are just as I was sitting here listening to the different comments, I was going back to my college days when Mr. Tuttle, Dr. Tuttle, recommended that he introduced a oil-eating bacteria. Well, there are a lot of genetic engineering going on at this present time, and I think that in the future we will see something like this in progress. In addition, there have been a lot of environmental things that we can add to clouds and to certain situations like this that will also help to purify the environment. I think that these kind of futuristic things are definitely in the future, but presently I think that what is important is working together with the federal government, the EPA, state governments, and cities to, as a community, to try to address these problems and overcome them as true Texans can and will.
Thank you. I'd like to take a minute to ask the council if any of them might have a specific question for one of the specific candidates. Councilmember Arp?
Well, I just have a specific question. Maybe I'd like to have the answer from all of them, or whatever you think. One of the things I had heard that would help on being able to cut down on our pollution is possibly during the rush hour, an hour or two in the morning, having the large trucks not be able to run during that particular time. And I was wondering if that's looked at any. I mean, they could run at night or something like that and take off and eat breakfast or something during that time. I was wondering if that's been looked at, because when you're trying to move 100,000 pounds of truck up and stop and start and stop and start, that's got to be putting out a lot of pollutants. And I was wondering, has that been even looked at?
Does anyone care to address that?
I'll take a shot at it. That has been discussed quite a bit in a lot of different circles, and I've gotten a ton of mail on this issue, and also all your construction equipment that they're wanting them not to operate except on specific time frames, and the community that's out there questions whether or not the value returned for that type of situation where you don't run your construction equipment, your employees have got to, there's just a lot of cost that go into that, and the cost-benefit analysis they don't think will work. But again, the trucks, most of the trucks I think are already on their own, are starting to move at night. Every time I go to Austin, whether it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 1 or 2 o'clock at night, they're all out there. And I think that they're realizing that they're part of the problem, and they're trying to also do what they can to clean up our air. But the trucks don't normally put out quite as much pollution, that's what I'm being told, as automobiles do. So they are a problem. All of it is a problem, but we got to work it.
Thank you. Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'll probably address this question to Bill, since he has 16 years' experience. Recently in Haltom City, we have been pondering the question of 8-liners. It is our understanding now that there's a case pending in Amarillo in the Court of Appeals up there. Can you tell us at this point where the Texas legislature stands on this, or is this in committee? Is this on hold? What is the status
No,
of it?
it's been before the legislature, and basically it was voted down by the legislature. The governor is very, very much opposed to the 8-liners, and people are entrepreneurs, are very smart, and they'll find a way. If there's a little bit of a glitch in the law somewhere, they'll find a way to fill that glitch. And that's what's happened on a lot of these 8-liners. I have an idea that the courts, I'm not a lawyer, so Monty might be able to answer this question better, but I have an idea that the courts are not going to uphold the 8-liners. If they do, I have an idea that the legislature will come back behind it and close that gap in the law.
Do you have an idea of the time frame on that?
Well, we couldn't do anything until 2001. And the way the legislative process works, if you got it passed, even under an emergency provision of September 1 or January 1 of 2002 would be the very earliest that it could possibly happen.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Williams.
I guess my question would be for either one of the incumbents, traffic speed northeast Tarrant County and the increase in traffic fatalities on our freeways. I know that Mr. Carter had said something about the bottleneck at 820 and Highway 26, but he didn't say much about 820 and the 70 and 80 mile an hour cars leading up to that. And I was wondering if maybe him or Ms. Truitt would like to address that, or any of the other two. Just, do we have anything in the plans to try to correct the problem?
In fact, one of the components of the state implementation plan is to decrease the highway speeds by 5 miles per hour in an attempt to reduce automobile emissions and help clean up the air a bit. During the last session of the Texas legislature, there was the trucking industry actually encouraged. Well, it wasn't just the trucking industry, but there was we were encouraged to increase the speed of trucks to meet that, so that they would be the same as the speed of other automobiles on highways, because I guess it was demonstrated that most accidents involving trucks are people running into the back of them because they're not traveling at the same speed as other traffic. But in response to your question specifically regarding the speed, that is part of the state implementation plan, which is proposed to lower the speed by 5 miles per hour.
Are they planning to add more officers to these areas, or do you know, DPS officers?
I know that DPS will be required to enforce the rules and regulations of our state implementation plan, whether it be in the area of their jurisdiction as far as speed is concerned, or as far as other components of their enforcement. They will be required to enforce it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Unby.
I just want to tag a question on the back end of that one, and that is, do they have some kind of statistics or data or information that tells us that if we lower the speed limit by 5 miles, it's going to increase the air quality by X? For anyone who wants to answer.
Let me try it. As an insurance agent of 50 years, I also want to just kind of tie into both of the questions. The number of accidents and the severity of the accidents are not necessarily speed. It's the irresponsible speed. It's the people cutting in and out of the traffic. It's the guy that goes to sleep. It's if all cars were traveling at the same speed and everybody was doing what they were supposed to do, and not talking on their cell phone, or the accident ratio would not be near what it is when you got this guy that cuts in and out of the traffic and causes a big pileup. If people would just take more care with having an adequate amount of distance between them and the car in front of them, we could probably prevent about 30 or 40% of the accidents. But the speed factor, I don't think that there has been anything that scientifically says that that's the case. I have been studying quite a bit the statistics that in the rural areas, the traffic deaths have gone up, and some people are trying to say it's because it's faster. Most of those accidents, when you get in and research them a little bit, somebody went to sleep, they missed a curve, they wound up out in around a tree somewhere. Very little probably to do with legal speed limits.
Right. I guess that's the only reason why I had to ask that question, is because I know you said lower the speed limit 5 miles an hour, and I don't really see that as a solution. If it's not going to change the air quality by lowering it, if we're just burning the gas and not getting better air, then I don't see any real solvable solution by changing the speed limit. That's why I'm asking, is it going to create less accidents, less car jams, less traffic jams?
I can't state to you unequivocally or specifically what the evidence was that was considered by the North Texas Commission, but this proposal was, this part of the proposal was the result of the North Texas Commission, the Regional Transportation Commission, in concert with local entities like chambers of commerce and so forth. And I would presume that because the North Texas Commission does planning, that they've looked at evidence that would suggest that it would help.
Okay, and the only reason I asked again, because we've been up and down this, anybody's been around for a while, we've been up and down the speed limits, gone all the way down to 55 and back up to 70 and gosh, everything in between, and years ago.
Maybe we're just trying to keep the sign makers having a job.
The only thing I saw, and we discussed it down here, was when y'all said that, I thought, well, all I would see is our courtrooms getting more full, and we'd have the congestion here instead of out there, and of course, it'd probably increase our revenue for the city, and that's great. But I appreciate it. Thank you. I tried to find some substantiation for that. Thank you.
We have 3 council members that haven't asked a question. Councilmember Henserling?
Well, this is really, thank you, Madam Mayor, for anyone who thinks they're most suited to answer. It has to do with utility. Has to do with utility deregulation. Big issue. I guess it was before the legislature, in the last legislature. I guess trying to come up with an issue that meets, speaks to the citizens here locally. What's going to happen with our local utility rates, first of all? Secondly, or maybe over the short term, and if you can even project long term. And the other part of it is the reliability. What is the state legislature doing to ensure the reliability of the industry in general, and whomever is most qualified to address that or would like to?
Since I sat on the State Affairs Committee and listened to those arguments for many hours, I'll try to answer the question. The rates are going to come down in the near future, and they are in the process of coming down because part of the compromise that was made in passing of the legislation was that there would be a decrease in rates of, I think it was 5% or 6%, somewhere along in there. I don't remember the exact figure. And all of the companies agreed to that. Also, all the companies agreed to the fact that they would not be able to go into some areas of competition until they lost a larger part of their market share. So, and there was some concern about reliability when that happened and all these new entrants into the marketplace. But the grid system in the state of Texas is the best in the whole United States. And the companies and all of the players have made sure that Texas has had and will continue to have adequate supply of electricity. And but in talking about utilities, I want to try to correct something that Monty Mitchell had said about the right-of-way franchise issue on the telephone and telecommunications issue. There was never any loss to the cities. The cities were guaranteed the same income that they had in 1998, and that they would also, there is a growth factor built into that so that the city's incomes can grow. So I don't know where he got his information, but it's totally false.
Mr. Carter, just one follow-up question, Mr. Carter.
Yes.
Regarding, has the utility industry came back, and are they concerned about what was passed the first time around? Is this thing going to go to court with the utility industry, or are they pretty well satisfied with the agreement we've got now?
Well, the courthouse is always the favorite place, for lots of folks, and there will probably be some court challenges. I don't think that the major players will be challenged. The PUC has pretty well got control, okay, and they're calling the shots, and it's pretty hard to file that lawsuit against the PUC, and those guys are sitting there telling you what your rates are going to be in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Mitchell?
Just as a cleanup question, in actual fact, AT&T wrote an initial interim report, and my opponent did not change a word in House Bill 1614, and that would have taken the franchise fees away from the cities and cost a city, like I said, North Richland Hills, approximately $3 million and increase our property taxes. However, Steve Wollins authored House Bill 1777, which said that cities should and could collect fees from the Public Utilities Commission, and that commission tells companies how much to pay and then proportions the money to the cities. And so if there's a lawsuit, the PUC is sued and not the cities, and that's protective for the cities. And that's where that information was gotten from Texas Municipal League, if you're familiar with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy,
Mayor, may I add to that? I also was the co-sponsor, co-author of the bill that passed. Woolens and I both were.
thank you. Nancy, would you care to address anything that has come up in the last few minutes? I mean, really, if you want to jump in, please feel free. All right. Did Councilmember Markham or Councilmember Quinones, did you have a question for any of our candidates?
No, not at this time. At least, I think everything's been covered. I can contact them individually if I need to.
Well, then, we thank you so very much for being with us this evening.
I think Ed may have one, though.
I have one more question. Nobody wants to answer it. Okay. The question was the lottery that we put into place some years ago and the educational money. Does anybody want to touch that?
Moving right along. All right.
Good for you.
Somebody could say I told you so.
I introduced legislation to dedicate the lottery to education because when Ann Richards put that forth to the public, that was the understanding. The arguments have all been, oh, it's an unstable funding source, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that they say, well, it does go to education because it comes out of general funds. It's my opinion, and it's the opinion of many, that we need to go ahead and dedicate the lottery to education, but we need to make sure and stipulate in that legislation that it is not to be in replacement funds. It is to be in addition, that the state is required to continue their current funding levels and increase their funding levels as they would, but that the lottery be totally up, over and above.
That's why I believe what everybody in here that I know that was able to vote at that time voted for. So I appreciate that. And the only other question we'll have, and y'all can find it out for us, is who the general is, okay? That's what we need to know. Thank you.
Anything else, Council?
You gonna let them know why Dewey stopped?
We appreciate it so very much that you were here with us this evening, and we thank you. The next agenda item, I have a proclamation for Dental Assistance Week, which takes place March 5 through 11. And I do believe we have some dental assistants in the audience. So those of you that don't have good teeth, don't smile, because they're going to see you. Would you meet me at the podium, please?
Take care.
Good evening, ladies. Would you come to the microphone and introduce yourself, please?
I'm Tracy Cipriano.
I'm Jean Drake. Everybody knows me. I'm Denise Jennings.
Let me just take a moment to read this. Whereas dental assistants working with the dental profession play an important part in maintaining the dental health of the citizens of Haltom City, Texas, and the United States. And dental assistants, through their skill and knowledge, make dental care possible for increasing numbers of citizens. For over 65 years, the American Dental Assistants Association has encouraged and made possible continuing education for dental assistants in order to enhance the delivery of dental health care to the public. And the Texas Dental Assistants Association and the Texas Dental Assistants Organizations have designated the week of March 5 to 11 of 2000 as Dental Assistance Week in Haltom City and throughout the United States. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Watkins, Mayor of the City of Haltom City, do hereby proclaim the week of March 5 to 11, 2000 as Dental Assistance Recognition Week. Thank you so much. You need to be in the picture. Oh, see how Dragon stuff. Just like okay, here you have a cameraman, so you're not going to.
I don't have to tell you how to smile.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
It's embarrassing.
Councilmember Markham, do you have your light on for a specific reason?
I was just waiting on until you got back so we do the consent agenda.
Oh.
Moving on along.
Next item of business is the consent agenda, which consists of agenda items 3 through 10, minus 8, which has been removed, plus 12 through 16. Now, Councilmember Markham.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving right along, I move that we pass the consent agenda.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
For a second.
Councilmember Henserling.
That's for a second.
I have a motion and a second. Please register your vote. Motion passes unanimously. And now we'll take up agenda item number 8, which concerns consideration and/or action regarding approval of a resolution regarding sales and use tax on purchases made over the internet. Mr. Eisen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item was removed from the consent agenda by Councilmember Quinones, and I'm sure he'll have some comments after I hopefully briefly describe the resolution that you're considering this evening. In 1998, Congress passed the so-called Internet Freedom Act, and that was later signed into law by President Clinton. The Act had several major provisions. The major provision that you're concerned with this evening is that a 3-year moratorium on state and local sales taxes on internet transactions was approved at that point in time, and during this interim time period, an advisory commission on electronic commerce has been appointed to study these taxation issues as they relate to the internet. The resolution that you're considering this evening would urge that at the end of this 3-year moratorium, that the moratorium not be extended further or not be made permanent as it relates to sales taxes on internet transactions. There were several reasons why this item is being considered by you this evening, not the least of which is that the city this last fiscal year received $5.4 million in revenue from the sales tax. Of that, $3.6 million went to the general fund, $850,000 to the Crime Control and Prevention District, and a little over $900,000 to the Economic Development Corporation. So if any transactions which are now being made in local business establishments are made over the internet and that revenue is lost to the city, it wouldn't take a very significant loss in sales to the internet for there to be a significant impact on the city's budget, and that's why the item is being considered by you this evening.
Thank you. Comment from council? Councilmember Quinones?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep my comments to a minimum because I know that there are others who may want to talk also. I asked to pull this off because I just am not in favor of the resolution. I'll just give a few reasons why. There's a lot of talk about the internet and tax and various things, and there's a lot of factors that go into people's decisions in buying things. In the early part of the century, when Richard Sears started catalog sales, there was a big hoot-ow about how he was selling things through a catalog and how that wasn't fair to local business and wasn't fair to people, and how could he do that because he didn't have to maintain a building in the area and have a lot of overhead. And but the one who benefited from that was the consumer. The consumer got to order something from a catalog, which is still not taxed, by the way, except under a certain rule, and they mentioned it, the state has to be located in that state, which is the law at this point. But the consumers were the ones who ultimately benefited, middle and low income on down, and it eventually revolutionized the retail business. And most of those businesses thrived, and look at where we're at today. So I think that competition is always good in economics. It's always good in business. It brings the best out of us. A lot of factors are involved. And in fact, I think a tax on the internet could very well hurt the internet and those who do business over it, because not only are you paying additional sales tax, you're also paying usually for shipping. You don't pay that if you go to a local store. You just pay the sales tax. And so I think you automatically had an anti-competitive thing there. I think also it's a new tax because what is being discussed, and you heard some of the representatives mention it, some kind of a national sales tax or a centralized system that is really a new thing that's going to be coming. Right now, as we mentioned, the law is that catalog sales, if a store has a physical presence, Sears, they'll collect it because they're physically present here in this state of Texas. So they'll collect it if you make a catalog sales. But if you don't, if you order from Vermont or New Hampshire and you order it from here, you don't have to pay that. The recommendations that are going to be coming are going to say, we're going to change that law and we're going to add on top of that this tax. And I don't know about you, but when I hear the government say we want to make things fair, we want to make things level and even, I got a problem. I can look at history to tell me some of the results of that. A few other reasons. I think there's a real privacy issue involved. We know that technology is advancing exponentially at a great rate. You can find out what people are buying and what they're not buying and who they're talking to and where they've been. And I quite honestly have a lot of concerns about privacy if a sales tax and all our transactions are going to be included in some database. And I think that the potential for abuse is great. Right now you can go to a store, nobody knows you're buying it. But if you buy it over the internet, somebody will know about it. And I don't know if I would be satisfied with the concerns. Also, we hear a lot about the environment and driving on the streets and everything else. I mean, if you could do something out of your home, that reduces traffic, that reduces other things. And quite honestly, I read the other day in the paper how sales tax revenues all over the country, and Texas included, are rising incredibly. We're seeing new strip malls and new stores all over the place. So I don't think that the businesses out there are going to be affected. I think this is part of the market, and there'll be some impact. There's a little competition. That's the way things are. I don't think to level the field by raising taxes. I don't think that levels anybody's field. It just creates another field to fight on. And finally, I just think that that this tax. One of the least known facts is that already 20% of the transactions on the internet are already being taxed. Many stores are already collecting them. So I think we need to adapt to that, and we shouldn't go out and try to regulate an industry simply because we think we're losing revenue. The way the law is now, we're not really losing that much. We're gaining a lot, and I think an additional tax is not necessary. So I'll vote against it if whoever, I'm going to wait and let the other councils make a motion, but if it's to pass the resolution, I will vote against it.
Councilmember Arp?
I guess my question would be to Councilmember Quinones. You had mentioned that if you order from a catalog that's out of the state, you don't have to pay sales tax. Are they now considering changing their mind on that and start taxing on catalog sales also?
Well, I think that's part of it, and for many years, states have been wanting to get to that type of transaction, and this is an opportunity for do that. So I think the catalog, I think inevitably it's going to be included in that. I think that and the reasoning is, well, if we've got to pay it, you should too. And that's why I think there's a problem. I think that's one of the things. So that would be an additional tax that's not in place right now.
Is that supposition on your part about the catalog?
Well, I would imagine it is, but I think the weight of the industry is, if you look at the catalog, the retailers are the ones complaining about the internet not being taxed. How can they then come back and argue, well, but leave us alone? I don't think the moral argument's on their side. I think they either all pay it or they all are exempt from it. I think that the argument is against them based on what they're doing.
I'm concerned about the mom and pop businesses in Haltom City, that if you'll look around, that's mostly what we have in Haltom City are the mom and pop businesses. I'm concerned about someone on Belknap or Denton Highway or Haltom Road that has a product for sale. They're paying taxes in the city and they're supporting our city, but yet someone who lives in our city can buy it from someone in Arizona and not pay the sales tax on it. And that concerns me because then I see the businesses going away and I see the internet thriving. That doesn't do anything for our community. So that's where my concern comes in. And the people, I know that there are probably a lot of citizens in Haltom City that perhaps don't have the means to afford the technology that's necessary to buy over the internet. So that concerns me as well. And if the sales tax is taken away, if there is no sales tax implemented, not taken away, then with the businesses going away, what does that do to our services that we provide the citizens? Well, that's where I come from on all this.
Well, if I could respond to those those 2 points of concerns. At this point, as a percentage of sales tax receipts, I believe the number is less than 1% is actually, of all the sales tax generated across the country, all the sales transactions, excuse me, less than 1% of it would be related to internet transactions. So 99 point whatever that figure is the traditional form of transaction. So we're not talking about something that's going to devastate any kind of industries. I would be curious as to and I don't think the data is out there yet to show how many people are buying things, what kinds of transactions it would involve when you have a Haltom City resident who could have bought something from a Haltom City business but didn't. I think that's hard to compute that. And that itself is a supposition as well. It would be hard, and I think the data is probably not there because it's still a little early to do that. And as far as access to the internet, like anything else, that is increasing daily. In fact, you can go to our library and access just about anything for free, and the citizens can do that. So I think the cost is going down, and the accessibility is really not that much of an issue, and to outweigh the privacy and the interference in a really very thriving and beneficial market.
If they get in their car, as counterpoint here, and drive past Joe's fish bait shop and go to the library to buy it over the internet, we're still out.
Well, or they can drive down the street and buy the same product from the Haltom business that probably would has the product, but doesn't have the shipping and handling that you would pay over the internet. So, I mean, that's a decision that individuals make, is do they want to get up and go down to the street and pay the sales tax, or do they want to just do it over the internet and pay the shipping and handling? I mean, that's the decision that the consumer ultimately ends up making. And I think that is best left to them.
Councilmember Markham?
Thank you, Mayor. I think, you sit here and you listen to the debate back and forth, and a lot of what Tom said, I do agree. And a lot of what I've heard, I agree also. But last council meeting, we sat here for, it seemed like too long.
Only an hour.
For 2 hours listening to the softball issue, where we're going to raise the non-residence fee $2, $4 to get to $8 in 3 years. It takes a lot of money to run this city, and people are requiring more facilities. They're requiring more than they did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we didn't have the internet. We do now. And that will quadruple in the next few years. I think we all can agree on that. And I think it's right. I think it's only just that anyone pays sales tax over the net as you would go down here and pay sales tax anywhere else. I believe it's only right. And I think it's fair. And I'm here to look out for Haltom City as a whole, and I think we all should do that. But I think we need to go along with this and look out for the city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Jennings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too am in agreement with some of the things that all the council members have said. I found in the past that when you go up against the United States government, regardless of what you would like to happen, that's not necessarily what they're going to decide it's going to happen. And as I read this, what this is proposing is that the city of Haltom City oppose any attempts by the United States Congress to enact any further legislation to extend the moratorium, regardless of whether we're for or against the moratorium. Whether or not the city of Haltom City comes out and says we want it or we don't want it is really going to have very little, if no, effect whatsoever on what happens in the Congress of the United States of America. Based on that, I too would have to defer to the citizens of Haltom City. If you give your rights to the federal government over and over and over again, as you give those rights up, you no longer have them. They have those rights. So I would like to keep as much of the decisions of what happens in Haltom City here in Haltom City. So I would have to agree with both Dewey and Tom on that.
Councilmember Art?
Well, I just wanted to mention I had heard over the radio an advertisement that had to do with the fact that 30% of the people that traveled over the last year bought their tickets over the internet, as far as airline, hotels, and car rentals. That's a big impact, I'm sure, to travel agencies. So it's starting.
Councilmember Ownby?
Well, it's going to sound silly, Tom. I do agree with you, but to the point, because I know we don't always agree. I agree with you that it's an unfair advantage, okay? And there's always been an unfair advantage. And there always will be an unfair advantage, unfortunately, not only by choice, but and sometimes by circumstance. But because of that, that's another reason why you should want the tax levied on the internet, because if you're saying that the poor can't take advantage of the internet, then should you give the affluent the ability to take advantage of it and receive one more benefit of not being taxed also? Or should you go ahead and excise that tax? We need the same playing field. The four that sat out here in front of us a while ago, if they can get it on the same playing field, then we need to be able to take advantage of that. Because I'm for protecting the city, and I know you are, and I know everybody on this council is. And anything that I see that, like Don said, 30% of the airline tickets, I don't know how many airline tickets were sold out of Haltom City, but I do know this, if it's one more airline ticket sold out of this city that was untaxed, then we missed that revenue that y'all are counting on to do the things that you want to be done in this city. And for that reason, I'll support it.
Who's the affluent, Ed, by chance?
Councilmember Williams?
Well, I'll stand up and be counted for the affluent because they said I live in an affluent neighborhood. But the tax on the internet, Nancy, Madam Mayor had mentioned the mom and pop businesses, and just for instance, there's some large retailers out on 820 that aren't in Haltom City. And comments been made before, well, I went over to this large retailer and picked something up. Well, you could have bought it over here. And the tax would have stayed in Haltom City, which would have been better for Haltom City. But even on that, if you buy it over the internet, it's kind of like going out there on 820 and buying it from the large retailer. If you go to a mom and pop business or one of these small retailers here in town and you purchase something and you've got a problem with it, then you can go back and talk to a person. Some of these large retailers, or if you buy it over the internet, you know, like the stuff that says as seen on TV, well, they may be as seen on TV, but when you get it in your house and open that box up, it may not be as seen on TV the way you saw it. And I would like to see the tax be to make it equal, to where Haltom City can get their part out. I know me and Tom don't agree on everything. We agree on a lot of stuff, but and of course we're not going to make the decision here tonight, and it's going to be set in concrete. You know, there's going to be a lot of decisions made on this, but at this point I would be voting in favor of having the tax on the internet to make it equal.
Then I would be in line for a motion. Councilmember Jennings?
I hate to be first, but Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve trying to keep the tax on the internet for the city of Haltom City.
Councilmember Williams?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Please register your vote. Motion passes with Councilmember Quinones voting against. Agenda item number 11 is a public hearing. Mr. Eisen?
This public hearing is with regard to a plat filed by Robert L. Baker. The purpose of the plat is to replat the property in order to construct a brick and tile building for the reconditioning of automobiles, storage of automobiles, and wholesaling of automobiles. The property is located on the north side of Airport Freeway at the termination of Catalpa Street.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing, and is the applicant here? Yes? Do you have do you want to address the council or be available for questions? All right.
Council, Mayor, I'm Robbie Baker. My business is at 1718 Eden Road in Haltom City, and I'm open for any questions about the building I'm trying to build.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for this agenda item? Anyone wishing to speak against this agenda item? I have a speaker's card from, I'm going to try not to butcher your name. Felix Tova, is that correct? Excuse me? Are you Dennis?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Dennis, you want to step forward to the podium, please? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dennis Phillips. I live at 1804 Eden Avenue. The main thing that we're concerned about this replatting is the portion of it that has been tied into this that is residential property along Eden Avenue. If you look at the plat, there's several residential lots there. I believe there's two that face Eden Avenue that directly adjoin to the commercial property that's being replatted. Most of us in the neighborhood who I've talked to are not opposed to anything that they want to do back on the commercial. But what we want to have is an assurance that they're not going to put a driveway across that residential area and use Eden Avenue for access in and out of their property. We have enough traffic up and down Eden Avenue. There's more children on that street now than there ever has been before. And we have a problem as it is a lot of times of, Eden Avenue, both ends of Eden, both ends of Catalpa Street, and Zelma Street have signs, no large trucks. Well, they unload their transports on Eden Avenue at the end of the street at late hours and nights and things, you know. And that's just been a newly repaved street that the people in the neighborhood paid for, that they're unloading these large trucks on. But what we're trying to prevent is them having, we want that residential area there to be maintained residential, because like we discussed it, that there was no ordinance, you know, any flat work you do in concrete, you don't have to have a permit for. They have direct access to their property. What would keep them from putting a driveway all the way across that property? They wouldn't even have to take a permit out and use it for a drive-through. They still use it, even though the streets are posted no trucks. They put trucks on there all the time anyway. So what would keep them from driving through and using that for a turnaround and turning our neighborhood into an area like over at Fort Worth Auto Auction, where there's hundreds and hundreds of cars coming and going up and down our street every day? That's what we are concerned about.
Dennis, this is Mrs. Mitchell, and she can address your question.
We actually have two policies in place, or two provisions in place, that hopefully will put your mind at ease. One is all drive approaches must be permitted by the city engineer. When we first met with the applicant, that was definitely one of the issues that we did resolve with them, is that there would be no access from the residential there, keeping the two completely separated. That's one assurance, is the city engineer would not permit it. The second one is that you will be going through a similar process very soon. They're required to put a conditional use permit on this property. What a conditional use permit will do is it will actually show all the neighbors the actual site design of the property, so that you will see every point where they're going to have a drive approach located. And if the city council approves that site plan, then they will be bound to that site plan. If there's a violation or anything like that, then the city will go in and take care of that, because they would be in violation of the site plan. One of the assurances, because it is against residential, is when they put this type of land use up against residential, they're obligated to put in a 6-foot-high screening fence with a 10-foot wide landscape buffer strip, and they have to plant trees on their side. The 6-foot screening device definitely will stop any kind of access going through the residence. And so there's a few assurances there that hopefully will put your mind at ease. But you all will, if you're within 200 feet, when they come through the conditional use process, you'll actually see the site design of the lot. Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, like I say, we're just trying to make sure that our residential area remains the way it is, so we, you know, have the quality of life that we've had there. I've been there almost 15 years now, and the other neighbors who came with me, Paul back there, he's been there, I think, 44 years. Stanley's been there 7. Tovar, Felix, and Ramon have been there, I think, 5 or 6 years now. 8 years already? And we're just trying to keep our neighborhood as it has been all along. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak against this agenda item? Stanley Hilton?
Thank you. I'm Stanley Hilton, and I live at 1800 Eden, at the corner of Catalpa and Eden. My place backs up to his. And again, what Dennis was talking about, our main problem is with the cars, the RVs, or whatever, the kids in the neighborhood. We have apartments around the corner on Lower Birdville. The kids walk by there, and they've had several of them hit by, I wouldn't say him, but you know, the employees hitting kids on bicycles.
You've had children hit on bicycles?
Yes, ma'am. And beg your pardon? Well, yours or your dad's, whoever's the RV, the car deal.
Oh, that's my dad's.
Well, I'm just saying, and it's not recently, but it has been in the past. The unloading of cars, vehicles, everything like that. I had to pay for the curbs on my side.
Mm-hmm.
The gentleman across the street and everybody else on the block has had to pay for curbs, which we didn't want, but we got them for the improvement of the city. It's great, it looks great, but when they unload these cars and everything, it's tearing up the curbs, they throw the litter out everywhere, and it's a nuisance when you go down and ask them to move the car, and he knows himself that I've called more than anybody on the block. I'm known as a crybaby at that end of the block. But it's our neighborhood. We've got kids. We don't want the kids hurt. And like I said, the main thing is to be ensured that there's no access on Eden Avenue or them parking their cars. And that's the only concern that we mainly have.
And that's correct, Mrs. Mitchell?
That is correct. That is correct. It will not. It won't happen. I mean, I say it won't happen. I don't know if it could happen.
Would you step to the microphone, please?
Oh, it was loud enough. What I'm saying is, yeah, it could happen, but if there's an approved site plan on the property, then all you would need to do is call our code compliance people, let them know that this is happening. They'll send somebody out immediately and take care of the problem. But staff, since we've been meeting with Mr. Baker from day one, there's never been any discussion, any intention, anything of letting any of his non-residential property or his non-residential use have any kind of negative impact on the residential use. We work very hard to protect the residential uses out there from any kind of non-residential that's abutting them.
Yes, sir?
This is what I'm talking about. They said they put up the no trucks. She said they wouldn't let it happen if there was a problem because they'd come down and see about it. The trucks, the 18-wheelers, they come down here. They come down and call the police officers. They come out. Usually after they've gone, they can be there 3 hours, and the city, they'll send someone out later. And we tell them what the problem is, and they said, well, we cannot stop them from getting deliveries. Catalpa Street runs right at the end of Eden off of 121. They have a place big enough to drive an 18-wheeler down in to load and unload, but they don't do it. They park on Catalpa. And this is the problem I'm having with what she's saying. If you have a problem, call. Well, they don't ever get solved because they do it every week. Weekends, you can't go down Eden to get on 121 because of the 18-wheelers. You have to drive plumb out in the middle of the road to look around the cars, the 18-wheelers.
And you're saying there's a sign saying these 18-wheelers are not supposed to be on that street?
There's no trucks.
And they're on the street?
Yes, ma'am.
And you call the police?
Yes, ma'am.
And they tell you what?
We cannot stop deliveries.
Well, it seems to me like you either need to take the sign down or stop the deliveries.
Well, I mean, they have a lot big enough to handle 18-wheelers because they have one of their own. No, not at your place, but the one by, you know where I'm
This is an
talking.
undeveloped piece of property that we're dealing with.
Yes, we're not talking about this gentleman.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
You're
But, I
talking
mean,
about
this is what we're trying to prevent
Right.
from happening.
You're
Like
talking
I said,
ab-
it has nothing to do with his property.
Okay, well, I was misunderstanding. I thought you were talking about
But
him.
where he's talking about on Airport Freeway is a problem with the 18-wheelers. They get blocked where you can't even go down Eden because they've got them two abreast and they park the cars in the middle and just a small car. My wife has a 94 Escort and it will not go down between the trucks.
Well, let's get some comments from council. Thank you, sir. I'm not sure y'all popped on at one time. I'll just start with Councilmember Art.
I guess I had two questions. I was going to ask the gentleman when he was saying 18-wheelers, did he mean the car carriers type 18-wheelers? Okay, because I've seen them myself down there because they do that auction or whatever it is going on down there. I think that's what he's talking about is the car carriers, not 18-wheelers trying to make deliveries, but car carriers down there getting ready to go to auction. I think that's what he's talking about. Okay, the other question is I wanted to ask Ms. Mitchell, since the main concern is here on Eden, that property, I see that there's a lot marked, I guess, 16 that's on the north and a lot marked B that's on the south of this property on Eden. What are those zoned?
All of the lots that are along Eden are zoned single family.
So why can't we leave that part single-family and let them,
It is staying single-family.
that is staying
Yes, sir.
single-family?
And that's why I was trying to say that you all will be seeing this again, as the residents will see it again, because when they come through with the conditional use permit site plan, on that site plan will show the 6-foot-high screening fence of the M1 zoning district adjacent to the residential. That screening fence will be shown on there. They'll see exactly where we can request that they put comments on there that City Council approved. And I'm just giving, for instance, when we get to that point, we will be getting to the land use part of it. Right now, we're dealing with the platting part of it.
Right.
But when we get to that point, you all certainly can look at hours of delivery of vehicles. You can put specific comments on the actual site plan. All trucks must access off of Airport Freeway. But the way that they're going to be designing it, physically, a drive approach could not go from Eden through to the back part of their property.
So what you're saying is then the part that's on Eden is actually going to be single-family, and at the east side of that property, which would be, I guess, the back fence of everyone else's, they would be building a fence there?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, there's already, what it is we've got split zoning on what shows to be A. And what they have done is they have actually put the proposed lot line exactly where the zoning line is already located. So that little parcel right there apparently was originally designed to be a residential lot. It was just never platted as one, but council's intention back then was that it would be residential.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jennings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker, you do not at this time have vehicles on this property, is that correct?
No, sir.
This is undeveloped property?
Yes, sir.
Do you at this time have any vehicles parked on the street in this area?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you in the future plan at any time to park vehicles on the street in this area?
On the property I'm trying to develop?
No, on the street, on any of the, on Eden or on any of the streets surrounding that area?
No, sir.
All your vehicles will be on your property, is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Quinones?
That was some of the same questions. I wanted, and Karen, you've already touched on this, but for the benefit of the public, I want them just to be clear on the difference between what we're doing tonight, which is a plat and zoning, because I think that's a crucial difference here. And I think the question, the assurances we've gotten about Eden and Catawba are fine at this point, but we're going to revisit that again, and because I do appreciate their concerns,
Right.
and I think they're legitimate. So if you could make that a little clearer, I'd appreciate it.
Right. It can be very confusing because the state law requires if there's any property that's being replatted, and what that means is that you're changing the lot configurations. If it's residential, any property that's residential, it does require us to notify property owners from the original subdivision. In y'all's case, it's the Zelma addition. What we're doing right now is they're reconfiguring the lot lines, and they're creating a residential lot and creating an industrial lot. And so at this point, he's putting it into, I guess for lack of better terms, he's putting it in his own subdivision. It will have a legal 2 lots, a legal subdivision. Then, before he's able to get a building permit, he also has to come through the other side of the land use part of it, which is the zoning process. He has the basic zoning he needs on the industrial zoned property, but the way that the law is that for the type of land use that he wants to put there, he's also got to go through an additional step, which is called a conditional use permit process. You will be notified. It's the exact same notification. The only difference is you all will not be the only ones notified. We'll notify all property owners within a 200-foot radius, not just those in the Zelma addition. And then you all will be sent the notice. You'll be told of when it goes to public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then also the City Council. You'll see exactly where his building is proposed to go. You'll see exactly where his parking spaces are supposed to be. You'll see exactly where he's intending on parking any or storing any of his vehicles. You'll see exactly where any kind of paving is going to be on that piece of property, any kind of landscaping. We get into very finite details at this level, and you all will have an input at that point as well. And so tonight we're dealing with making it a legal piece of property. That's a planning terminology that we use. It's not that it's an illegal piece of property. They just have to get it in the proper design in order for them to build on that lot.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams?
Yes, ma'am. Is the chief of police still here? I've got a question for him if he can come forward.
There he is.
You want to step up to the mic, because Madam Mayor will tell you that just as you start answering. The gentleman was up here, last gentleman come spoke against this. He's telling me that there's no truck signs coming off Haltom Road going on Catalpa there. And I assume that it's a picture of a truck with a circle around it and an X. Now, does that mean no trucks or no through trucks, or can you explain that to us?
Not without going back to the law. I couldn't explain that to you, and I would have to research what it's. You could have a sign that would prohibit parking of the trucks there, or you could have a no through truck sign there.
Right.
And it just, without reading the law, I couldn't tell you.
I've seen them both ways. I've seen them with the truck with the circle with X through it or a half X, and I've also seen underneath there where it says no through trucks, which means that they can come in, unload, and go out,
yes,
but they can't use that for a through street.
Yes, and there will always be a provision for loading and unloading, no matter what law it is.
I think there was probably a trouble with other trucking companies just other than the ones you spoke of, because I think there was another trucking company at one time, if it's not still there on Airport Freeway.
If you're going to carry...
But this gentleman
John,
here...
if you're going to carry on a conversation with them, they're going to have to come back to the podium.
I'm through with him.
Okay.
I'm not through with it. But can I give him a statement, or does he have to come up for the statement?
Who?
The gentleman out in the black and yellow shirt.
Can you make a statement? That's different than a question.
All right, I'm going to try to make a statement. If you have a problem with trucks on your street down there, and you call down to the police department and you don't get any relief, keep calling until you get to this gentleman here. I'm still making a statement. Hey, come on up. Come on up. You're welcome statement, T.
Excuse me, sir. I've even called the mayor hotline and have not heard back from the mayor, not this year.
Thank you.
I'm glad you clarified that.
But I had called the mayor's hotline. In response to that, we even came to a council meeting to address it 2 years ago. And after a while, you just really give up. But it is a big problem with the trucks going down there on 121. Any of the neighbors you can ask, any of the officers. I've got cards from almost every officer you've got here where they've come down to my house. And I know they're busy. This is not a critical deal, but when I do ask for an officer to come to the house, they have had trucks parked out there. He said no parking. I've had them set out there for 4 to 5 hours. They cannot find a driver.
If you have that problem, you call down the police department. If you can't get that problem solved, this is a new police chief. He will handle that for you. And if you can't get that solved, this is the main chief over here, Bill Ison. And one of those 3 people will have that problem taken care of for you. But we should be able to do it without going to all that problem. And I'm ready for a motion whenever you're...
Okay. I think we're maybe getting a little off what's posted here on the agenda, talking about traffic. So do we have, Councilmember Ownby, do you have something that's posted?
Go ahead, I'm fine.
Councilmember Henserling?
I think it is just posted material.
Okay.
A lot of, and I appreciate the folks coming up and expressing their opinion about something that might impact them and their neighbors. One question is, do we have any idea when this might come back to us for zoning? How quick?
I figure within the next few months, probably they'll go ahead and get us the site plan and all that information, and we'll get it processed.
Okay. Probably within the next couple of months, there'll be a notice you'll receive in the mail. And I was just looking here at there'll be about 14 of the different residences that'll be affected and will receive that notice. And that's the time for y'all to come forward and put all your concerns before us again, like you did tonight. We can address hours of operation, no drive approach, the fence, everything that you think might affect you and, your neighbors. That's when we'll incorporate it in the site plan and take care of your concerns.
Councilmember Arp.
I was going to make a motion.
I haven't, okay, you have to wait till I close the public hearing. I think Councilmember Williams already offered to make that motion. Do you want to second it when I get to it? Okay, Councilmember Ownby?
But I won't say anything else except that At this point, ditto to what Gene said. If you do have questions, need clarification between now and then, Karen makes herself available. All you have to do is feel free to come up here and ask her, call her, and if you can't get a hold of her, do what John said. Okay?
Is there anyone else to speak against this agenda item? Then I'll close the public hearing and move for a motion. Councilmember Williams.
Yeah, okay. We will do everything we can to keep your neighborhood your neighborhood. I'd like to make approve for the plat for P-002-00.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please register your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the Visitors and Citizens Forum.
12. 12.
That was a consent agenda.
12 is on the consent agenda.
Like any of it's under public.
It's not a public hearing. It was put there by mistake.
Oh, okay. No problem. I stand corrected.
Our next agenda item is the Visitors and Citizens Forum, and I do have a speaker's card. Please be advised that the council cannot discuss or debate any issue brought forward at this time, and a 5-minute time limit will be enforced. Let's see, Mr. G.H. Rumbaugh. If you'll come up to the podium, please, and state your name and address for the record.
Name is G.H. Rumbaugh, live at 4229 Joy Lee, this city. I'm on the Charter Review Committee, and we got a problem. We're in violation of our charter review, of our charter, city charter. Section 10.02, nepotism. It says on there that no person shall serve on any offices, positions, clerkships, or service to the city that has any relations on the city council, mayor, or city manager. And I didn't know this till I got in and got to reading, got to looking. And we've definitely got it, we're in violation. And if I read this and understand it right, which I've talked to the city attorney, they agreed that that this was a violation. As I understand it, there's not even grace period. Y'all have to fix this. And I don't know if you can fix it tonight. If you can't fix it tonight, the next council meeting, I'd like to see it fixed. You know, things that I'm associated with, I want to be up above board. And I don't want a question out there, what we're doing with the charter review, what we're doing on some of the other boards, and some of the other things, are these really legal? Since we're in violation of the charter. And I'd like to get it cleared up. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is announcements or events. Do we have an announcement? Councilmember Williams?
Yes, ma'am. Shortly after the last election, this council got together and had a goal-seeking workshop, which was very constructive. We set quite a few goals, and quite a few of those goals have been attained, and we're still working on others. And one of those goals at that time was to look at the city ordinances, see which one of them had discrepancies in them, see if they needed to be rewritten, those ordinances that did have the discrepancy. And at that time, 1 or 2 citizens come before the council, maybe 3, and voiced their opinion on whether or not I'd have a conflict of interest on voting on C3 and C4 properties, since I own a business that is in C3. I checked with my attorney, I checked with the city attorney, and both of them assured me that I did not have a conflict of interest at that time on voting on anything that came up on a C3 or C4. We've gotten in-depth on the workshops we've had. We've had some very constructive workshops. At the last workshop we had, we didn't have a city attorney there. And we got right up to the point of talking about C3 and C4 property, where we still not have voted on any C3 or C4 property from the time we had our workshop back last July up to tonight. And I promised the citizens of Haltom City that if we ever got to where there was any doubt about me having a conflict of interest, I would recuse myself and I would file an affidavit with the city secretary. At our last meeting, I think it was February the 20th, we got in-depth discussion on C3 and C4 property, which involved automobile dealers, automobile repair shops, automobile paint and body shops. At that time, I felt that there may be people in that room, or in this room, or in the city that felt like that I might have a conflict of interest. So to take out all doubt and make sure that we do what's fair for Haltom City, I went in the following Monday morning, signed an affidavit with the city secretary, and she will tell you I did this, and I recused myself from any more voting, discussing, or having any input on C3 or C4 zoning as we review these. I've kept my promise, I've turned in my recusal, and I just want to make that public.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Councilmember Markham.
Mayor, I think this would probably be the appropriate time. We'll take but a moment. I'd like to thank the mayor, council, and staff for the cards and flowers, expressions of sympathy to me and my family for in the loss of my mother last week. I appreciate that very much, and felt that it was heartfelt and very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Then we'll move to agenda item number 17. Mr. Ison, did you want to brief us on that?
Just a couple of comments, and then I might ask Ms. Mitchell to comment in addition to my observations. At your last meeting, you had asked us to prepare some information for you regarding all properties in the city that are currently undeveloped, which are zoned in such a way that multifamily could be developed on them. We have some information for you that was presented to you, partially some that was sent to you in the packet, and also some additional information provided to you in pre-council regarding those 8 tracts of land that meet that particular classification. If you like, we can talk about each of those properties in some detail at this point, or if you would like to just get into some discussion without going into that detail, we can certainly do that as well.
We did discuss this previously in pre-council, and I think our what we had to do tonight was pretty clear. Perhaps I should begin with a couple of speakers cards that I have, and let's invite these people up to speak on this issue. Mr. Gary Gilley. Mr. Gilley, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor and members of the City Council and City staff, I'm Gary Gilley. My address is 2650 Meacham Boulevard in Fort Worth, and I represent Mercantile Partners. We are the owners. I'm not sure exactly which number you might identify, but we are the owners of this tract. You might recall some 15 months ago or so, I came before this council and asked you to amend your land use plan to include that tract for possibility of multifamily development. Mercantile Partners, when we made a commitment to extend our holdings and our development activities into Haltom City, we sought the opportunity to acquire a 100-acre tract at the southeast corner of 820 and Beach Street. And we knew when we acquired that tract that there was 2 missing ingredients to make that development what all of us would want it to be, and that's a high-use retail commercial development. And we had to have 2 things. One of them is we had to increase the number of rooftops, households, the consumer within that area. The second thing we had to do was provide for an access road along the south side of Interstate and Highway 820. We went out and we sought and we found what we felt like was the best multifamily development anywhere within this region, perhaps anywhere in the country, and that was Syntax. And we entered into an agreement with them that we would provide them 32 acres of land for them to build a multifamily development. Mercantile Partners came to you and asked you to amend your land use plan, and you granted that to us. Syntax came to you and presented to you a high-quality project which they proposed to build on that, and you granted that request to them. The project is still the same. It's taken a very long time to get that project to the point where we have it today. The other issue we had was the access road on 820. Working very diligently with your staff, efforts by the City Council, efforts by state representatives that you had here earlier tonight, we now know that that service road should begin construction sometime this year. We as Mercantile Partners have committed by anybody's definition, a large sum of money to make these two things happen. We have committed a lot of money to the construction of the service road. We've committed monies to the development costs to provide for the multifamily development in the way of the design of lift stations. If you might recall, there was a platting issue with the multifamily as to how we would deal with the assessment paving cost for the improvements of McLean Road. To solve that question, it was easy. We came down and we prepaid that assessment for McLean Road. We wrote you a check for that. And the only thing I'm here for you tonight, and I applaud you for looking and trying to see what you want Haltom City to be in the future. But this project and this development is so close to the closing stage, the beginning construction, that any effort that you might raise that would cause doubt on whether or not this project would be permitted would cause a great deal of hardship to our development plans. And the next speaker is going to follow me tonight is going to talk to you more in general as to the particular project that they're going to build there to perhaps answer any questions you might have. But we are committed to develop this property in what we want it to be, and that's high retail, high sales tax revenue development. And we cannot do it. We are convinced we cannot do it unless we increase the number of households through this multifamily development and we build that service road. And with those two things in place, I think all of us will see the things we want to happen on that remaining acreage. I thank you for your time tonight. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them for you. But whatever you do, I ask you one more time not to do not put a cloud on this particular project at this time, because it would cause hardship. Any questions? I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Questions from council? For Mr. Gilly? Councilmember Henserling?
This is something I'm extremely curious about, and it might not even be applicable to this project, and you can decline to answer if you'd like. Do y'all, McLean Partners or Mercantile Partners, own property on the west side of Beach Street?
Yes,
across from this?
almost 1,500 acres.
1,500 acres?
Yes.
I notice we get asked this question an awful lot of city council members. How come the west side of Beach Street is developing and not the east side? And we're the east side. And we see a lot of hotels, motels, Bennigan's, fast food, lots of great stuff going up over there. And I've got to just, while you're here, ask you to somehow respond.
I don't mind responding at all, because I've had to respond numerous times to your city manager that same question.
You know the story.
I would say it's part of the marketing strategy. We have pictured for the property in Haltom City that the larger retail user, the large box users, I would tell you that probably we could fill that spot up with hotels, but we would not be proud of them 10 or 15 years from now. We want to put the high-end, the national recognized retail outlets. I don't want to use the names because that'd be misleading, but you know who all of them are. And that's what we are marketing that property to be. And we are convinced that we will do that. There is another project that we have, just to kind of draw parallels. There's another project that we have in Rosenberg, right outside of Houston. And the key issue was there had to be an off-ramp from Highway 59 coming south out of Houston. And we talked to users, and we assured them that off-ramp was going to happen. We had the contracts, we had the money, we had everything that was going to make that happen. And it was always, talk to us later. The minute the contractor moved on ground and set up his barricades and started moving dirt, within a matter of weeks, we put under contract those very users that we'd been working with for a long time. And we think the same thing will happen here. We have a different vision for the east side of Haltom City. And I just ask Haltom City or the east side of Beach in Haltom City, I ask you to be patient with us, because it will happen.
A lot of folks in Haltom City don't understand that, we're the city and we control what goes there. We really don't.
That's
we,
correct.
we provide the services, the infrastructure, the fire protection, that sort of thing. But it's really up to you and the way you're marketing it, and I just want to make sure if there's anything we can do as a city to improve that,
I would tell you that everything that a city can do as a city to cause that type of development to occur, Haltom City has done.
Could you look at the camera and say that?
Every time we've asked for, and we haven't asked for your money, and the city manager will tell you that. We don't need your money. But what we ask for is your support, your assurances to the users. The city manager has spent a lot of time, Scott, he's not here tonight, Karen, talking to people. Haltom City has been wonderful to work with. And every time we've had a problem, the problem's been addressed and solved and resolved very quickly. So it's nothing that Haltom City can do more than what you've already done.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Gilly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of council.
The next speaker's request is from Kyle Lovelady. Please state your name and address for the records, Kyle.
Yes, my name is Kyle Lovelady, 10407 Royal Club, Dallas. And I'm here just to follow up with what Gary's already spoke about and really give you a feeling of the status of where we are. And that's really the intent to be here tonight. Again, as Gary mentioned, we came through here about 15 months ago with a change to the underlying land use and put together a PD ordinance for the site, which encompassed the 32 acres, a total of 798 units. Since that time, we've been on and off again with different potential long-term owners of the property. And that was during a time, as I think you've probably heard from some of the other multifamily development groups that have come through. The market came, it softened, and it's starting to rebound a little bit. And during that process, we have the long-term owner in place, and the issue that we've been battling is the financing of it, and we have that pretty well nailed down now. We're at the very end of a 15-month campaign to get this project off the ground. We've been working with the city staff and we've addressed the issues here at council to get the things within the community, the design to meet the needs and the product to meet the needs that the city has. And we certainly feel that we've done that. We've come through the process. We changed sites from the west side to the east side, and we redesigned that to meet substantially in accordance with the original PD ordinance. We re-engineered that site as of about 3 months ago, and we're finishing up that this month, and certainly plan on being through here for final plat and be ready to start construction in 45 days or so. Along with Mercantile, Syntex has invested 15 to 18 months in the pre-development of the project and designed it a couple of times. We have a substantial investment in the property, and certainly look forward to developing that in accordance with our PD that we have. And just really want to kind of give you the status of where we are. Things look good. Things ought to be able to start in a very short time frame. And so, whenever we heard that this was going to be on the agenda for tonight, we certainly wanted to be here to make sure that you knew where we stood, where we were, how far along that we've come, We've been working, even as of the last, within the last month with Karen, with our civil engineers, finalizing our plan to make sure that we have addressed all the concerns that she had. And I think the only thing we lacked bringing in is really landscape, and which will incorporate the flat work, sidewalks, that sort of thing is really the kind of the last component to be put on the plan for her review. So, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, but I wanted to make sure that you knew where we were.
Thank you.
and how
Any
far along we
question from council? Councilmember Quinones?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple. I've been here almost 4 years, and I'm a very patient guy, and I heard you say a while ago about 45 days you're going to start something. Did I hear you correctly?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's certainly our intent.
All right. And assuming that's the start time, what are we looking at in terms of completion
For construction?
and generally what we're going to have there so the citizens will know?
Okay. Construction, depending on the month we start, should be in the time frame of 18 months. 18, 19 months should be the standard construction cycle for a project of that size.
Okay, and your site is behind the current where Craig's Automotive is that right, partially?
Yes, yes. It's the 32 acres. First phase is the 16 acres on the east side.
And you're already under a plan development plan now, is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
And you mentioned some issues that you had. Do you, from your point of view, and then I'll ask Karen the same question, anticipate any problems as far as resolving those?
Issues related to the design, the plan?
Right.
Or,
you see
no.
anything that may stand in the way of that as
No,
far as?
what we did whenever we switched, see, initially whenever we came in, we came with the PD ordinance that had both Phase 1 and Phase 2 on it, and the initial plan was developed from the west to the east. About midstream, that changed, and we decided to go from the east to the west. And we had, when we first came in, we had pretty well fully designed conceptually the west side, and had put together a site plan for the east side, but that was not fully designed. So whenever we switched, we had to go back in and redesign that to meet all the parking requirements, things that weren't, the details weren't done on the east side, all the details had been done on the west side, because we had to get it in here very quickly. And that was going to be our Phase 2 project at that time anyway. So when we came back through, we had to do all the details on the east side, and that's what we've been working with staff to do, is to make sure once we get the parking requirement in, making sure we haven't moved the buildings from the initial site plan, and making sure that it's addressing all her concerns, and I believe we have done that.
Okay, let me ask Karen the same question. If Karen can come up, please, Ms. Mitchell. You've heard the gentleman talk about the timetable, 45 days and all this. What is it from your point of view? Do you see anything that could cause a problem, or do you believe that's fairly accurate, what he's saying?
Well, at this point, it's hard for me to say, because we still have some outstanding plat issues that haven't been resolved. We're still dealing with the preliminary plat as well as the final plat. Neither one of those have been scheduled for any agenda. I believe that both of the comments, and we are looking at them simultaneously, but any of the review comments have been put back in the applicant's court on both cases, and we have not received, to my knowledge, we have not received any of the review comments being addressed yet. As far as the site plan is concerned and whether or not it's considered a minor amendment, more than likely I'll be seeking direction from the city manager on that. The ordinance does give the zoning administrator the authority to grant minor amendments, but that is if, it doesn't say this, but more or less it's if I feel comfortable with that. And I'll probably be consulting with the city manager at this point on whether or not we should go that direction, or whether or not you all would like to look at what's considered minor amendments.
Okay. I think based on what we said, I mean, as far as this parcel, I'm willing to give them some time to not, that we're here to look at rezoning and give direction. I think we stay on the course and maybe look at it in 60 days and see how things stand. As far as this parcel, I feel comfortable with that at this point. I mean, I'll let the council go from there, but that's my view as far as this particular track is concerned. All right, thank you.
Council? Councilmember Markham? Councilmember Art?
Well, I was going to make some comments. One of them is that, Haltom City's landlocked, and I don't guess I have any questions for him if he wants to sit down. Is that what we're doing? Or are we just talking?
We're asking.
Okay, I don't have any questions for him.
Thank you, Mr. Lovelady.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now? Oh, okay, I was just going to say, the Haltom City's landlocked, and we don't have any new land that we can go out and annex. And if you look up there at that map, about half of the land that's at the north part of town is zoned right now multifamily. And that's what brought up part of what we're talking about tonight is that I think that we need to have planning and zoning go take a look at every one of those pieces of property, which in our literature was 8 different sites. And I think that the planning and zoning needs to look and see if we have appropriate zoning already, or do we need to go back to the original zoning or single family, or should we go with planned development or look at the density of our multifamily? I just think that before we go committing all these properties, I think we need to throw it back and let planning and zoning look at them again. And I'd like for them to look first at the sites that are south of 820, since it sounds like Site 1, which is the one that the mercantile people were talking about, is coming up pretty quick to something happening with it. And also 5 and 6, which is over close to Spring Lake apartment area. That'd be my recommendation. I'll throw that out for see what people think.
Discussion? Then Councilmember Jennings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I tend to agree with Tom on this. I have no problem at all with revisiting the other 7 parcels of land. I think that we've been in this thing 15 or 16 months. I think 60 days, were we to give them 60 days, I don't think we could send this to P&Z and have their recommendation back and act on it within 60 days. So I feel like 60 days would not be out of the question on that particular parcel. The others, I have no problem at all with sending to P&Z for their recommendations.
Councilmember Quinones?
Yes, I would mention that there's, what, 4 of these parcels, is it, Karen, that are already under planned development?
I believe that
3? 3 of those?
Yeah.
3.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so those already have some kind of supervisory role for the city. I'm just throwing this out, if we would just consider those that are just strictly multifamily without the planned development for consideration, would that be something that the council would consider rather than looking at all of them? Would that be satisfactory, Ms. Jennings and the others? I think that probably that's what we have in mind, since they already have planned development on them.
You could make a motion and see.
Well, I'd be glad to do it. Let me just do just that then.
All right.
All right, I'll do it.
Okay.
I move that we take the parcels that are strictly multifamily, not planned development, and have the P&Z look at them for, not to rezone, but to consider possibly doing that, and let the other parcels that are planned development continue, with the condition that we look back at this parcel that was presented to us tonight for mercantile in 60 days to see how things are for status.
Councilmember Jennings?
That would be for a second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Madam
Councilmember Henserling?
I have one question for the Syntec representative, I guess real quick, and Mr. Lovelady. And it's probably an easy question here. Is Commonwealth still involved in this development?
Yes.
Out of Virginia?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I want to know. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Arp?
I would like to, I guess I do have another question if the gentleman caught. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Is Syntec still working a deal with the people that are tax exempt on this property?
Yes.
Section 1?
Yes, we've, the city attorney should have be in possession of a pilot agreement from Commonwealth's attorney and also the school district. We met with the school district last week, and so yes, that is the game plan.
Thank you.
What? Wait. Mr. Eisen?
I was going to let him sit down first. You just mentioned, Mr. Lovelady, that apparently Commonwealth had received some comments we had made on the draft of the original contract we had sent some comments to them, and I had not heard anything back. And from your comment a little bit earlier, can I understand that we're about to receive their response to that?
If you have not already, I'll be sure to check on that.
And you mentioned that they also made some contact with the school district as well then?
Yes. Yeah,
Do you know who they have contacted there?
It was the associate superintendent for finance, David, I forget his last name.
Mr. Thompson, perhaps?
Yes.
Dr. Thompson?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's correct. And I met with him, Lou Foley and me both met with him last Wednesday. Okay, anything else?
Councilmember Rodenby?
Yeah, I hate to be the mean bad guy, but Kyle, I've been consistent with you throughout this deal. That's really what I asked for originally back when I worked on the planning and zoning, and so I'm going to tell you I'm the bad guy right now, let you know that. Because I see Mercantile Partners doing well, and there's no problem with that, but I see us getting zero tax base. I see everybody benefiting when we get a corner up where we have some nice looking buildings, and it's a 501c corporation. What kind of housing do we talk about? I mean,
No, what, the answer to the question a while ago is that they are paying taxes.
They are going to pay taxes?
Yes, yeah, that's what the agreement's for.
Okay, we're going to pay taxes, and the housing is still going to be built to
Just
spec.
same plans that we've been in here from the very
That was my
beginning.
complaint the last one. I hadn't heard any definition.
Right.
Right.
And,
Right.
I'd like for us to get a little closer together.
Right. And you may have misunderstood what my answer was before.
Well,
but
you said y'all were sending some stuff back and forth, but it didn't state what that was going to do.
Right, and it is an agreement to pay taxes.
Okay.
And if I might just add to that, Mr. Lovely, not only does it require that, but it also requires that if Commonwealth sells the development to another 501c3 corporation, that other 501c3 corporation would have to also agree to pay taxes as a condition of the sale. So, and then if it's sold, of course, to a private interest, well, it's taxable anyway, but we've tried to address those based upon the concerns raised by the council at your initial discussions with Mr. Lovely.
Then I'm pretty much happy.
All right. Glad we could help.
Councilmember Williams?
I'm going to second his motion if I read his mind right.
I already have a
Already been there.
motion and a second.
Let's move on.
I think it's safe for you to sit down now. I have a motion and a second. Please register your vote. Motion passes with Councilmember Arp voting against. Thank you. Boards and commissions, do we have any appointments or reappointments to boards and/or commissions except for myself? I have an appointment. It will be our second ex officio member of the Fire Services Board, Mr. Wayne Moody, and I will pass his address along to the city secretary. And could I have your vote, gentlemen, to ratify this appointment? Thank you very much. Passes. Agenda item number 19 is a request to have a charter review committee member removed from the committee. And just before I call this gentleman to the podium, I want to state the proper procedure for removing any member of any of our boards. And this is from our ordinance, section 223. Members of boards and commissions, unless specifically provided otherwise by state law, the city charter, or the code of ordinances, shall serve at the will and pleasure of the city council and may be removed from office pursuant to the following procedure. Upon a majority vote of the board or commission, the board or commission may submit a recommendation for a board member to be removed. The chair of this committee shall forward the recommendation to the council member who nominated the board member. The council member may, at his or her discretion, submit the recommendation to a vote of the city council. Upon the favorable vote of at least 5 council members, the council may remove the board or commission member from office. I just wanted to let everyone know what the proper procedure was. And as a citizen of Haltom City, anyone does have the right to bring any issue at all before council. So now I will ask Mr. Bill Louthan if he would care to come to the podium. And if you would, please state your name and address.
My name's Bill Louthan, live at 1924 Higgins Lane. And before I get started on mine, I would like to know when you guys came up with this. When was it discovered, the proper procedure for this? I know I came in about a week and a half ago.
July of 1996.
Okay, no, that's not my question.
Oh.
I came in, let me rephrase it. I came in about a week and a half ago, talked to Mr. Eisen, talked to you. There was nothing brought to me about this. A week and a half ago, I hadn't heard a word about this.
Mr. Eisen?
Yeah, and I have to apologize to you, Mr. Louthan. At the time that you came in and you asked what the proper procedure was, I did not recall that this ordinance had been passed about 3.5 years ago, and I guess I've sent you on a wild goose chase, and I apologize for that. I just did not recall that this ordinance existed at the time you came in.
All right. When did you recall?
I found out about it today.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I came down here last week and explained part of the problem. This is going to change my deal just a little bit, not a whole lot. I just want you guys to more or less understand what you have on your commission, your committee, whatever you want to call it, okay? And a lot of what I've got is going to be based on 4 words. Charity begins at home. Charity begins at home. The one I'm trying to have removed stood in my driveway and told me back almost 3 years ago, charity begins at home. All right? What I've got in the box, I want to show you. My wife won't go nuts. But I've got a point to make. So we're going to just go right through here just as quick as you can. And I'm going to show you. I'm going to start back in 1985. All right? If I've got these lined up, we're going to start in 1985. In 1980, I think I left some of them off here. In 1980, I started volunteering with PTA here in Birdville District through West Birdville. I started before that, but sometime in the early 80s, I was awarded a life membership in Birdville PTA. I've never been on their PTA board. I don't teach there. All I do is volunteer. That's sometime in the early 80s. All right? That's charity begins at home. All right? 1985, I was coaching one of my daughters in Haltom City girls softball. Your patients taught success in 1985. That's the first one. Charity begins at home. We got that one. 1986, still doing the same thing. This one says, for extraordinary work and dedication, Haltom City Girls Softball Association, 1986. Charity begins at home. And this is not all. If I'd have known you were going to bring the deal on this, I could have had 4 boxes of these. I just kind of went through, gathered out some of the highlights for me. Let's see. We're going to move to 1988 now. Mr. Ownby, you said last week when the kids were all in here with the kids' organizations that you coached ball before?
Oh, yeah, for 16 years.
All right. If you do it right, you have one team, you do it right, how many hours a week would you estimate you put in? Do it right. Take care of them.
Probably 30.
30 hours a week for one team? All right. I want to show you guys something. This is 1988. This one is a 11 and 12-year-old team, 1988. This one is a 7 and 8-year-old team, 1988. You don't hear too many coaches, volunteer coaches especially, taking 2 teams the same year. Plus I was on the board, Haltom City Girls Softball Association board. The 11 and 12-year-old team, I did right. We won first place. 7 and 8-year-old team, I don't know whether we did them right or not. We only finished second. You figure out how many hours I put in that week, that season per week. That's in 1988. I have one question about this person, and I think you guys probably know the answer, so I'm not going to tell you. What was Mr. White doing in 1988? Did he have anything that stood out in 1988? Do you guys know the answer? Just somebody don't say it, just nod. Well, Mr. White was arrested on a DWI charge. That's the facts that were given to me. May have the year off a little bit. That's what was told to me. All right, enough on 1988. We're going to go 1989. This is one of my favorites. This is still with Haltom City Girls Softball. For a wonderful coach and pitcher. That's the team I had to pitch for. We cut back to only one team that year. 1989, still at 1989. I cut back to one team because I was also helping 08 Stowe Elementary. They held an Olympics deal at 08 Stowe Elementary. We volunteered our time, money, resources, whatever they needed, we took care of it. Charity begins at home. Well, I'm going to skip a few years. If I'd have known the other thing was here, this thing was here, I would have covered every year. But I didn't know about that right now. So we're going to skip up to 1992. We'll go to 1990. 1990, Haltom High School, 1990. I've helped them all. Every school in the district in Haltom City, I have helped at one time or another. Because charity begins at home. We're up to 1991 and 92, David E. Smith Elementary. For outstanding service and dedication to David E. Smith Elementary. That charity begins at home. May 1992, Haltom Middle School. In appreciation for continued support of the youth in your community.
Mr. Louthan, I really do feel like you have...
I only have two more. Okay? Very important ones, too. Okay. I came to 1995, Volunteer of the Year from Haltom City. A lot of what this was in was connected with this one, I feel like. All right? All right. Okay, part of the deal with the charity begins at home. In 1993, I started working with a bunch of kids in downtown Fort Worth, Butler Housing Project and Ripley Arnold Housing Project. Put teams together, found a place to play. These kids had never played before in their life. All right? That's charity begins at home right here, but I decided to branch out. All right? I also started working with a bunch of kids over in the Philippines. You know, I'm wondering, maybe, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. 1995, it was a good year for me and Stan. 1995, I was selected to Volunteer of the Year, Haltom City. Mr. White got elected City Council. It was a good year for both of us. All right? 1997, I made the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. You know what that was? I decided to run for City Council, the mayor's position. You know, in hindsight, it's always a lot better. I made a big mistake. I didn't go out and ask anybody's permission. I thought, I'm a legal business owner, homeowner, lived here since 1954. I have as much right to run as anybody else, you know. Well, evidently not. Because in 1997, Mr. White, along with Wayne Iverson, they were driving Wayne's pickup, standing in my driveway. The remark was uttered to me, to my face, charity begins at home. I said, what do you mean by that? He never answered. To this day, he's never answered. All right? On election day, 1997, I was at work. Couldn't take off Saturday, busy day. My daughter was down there handling the stuff for me. Everybody knows this one. My daughter was standing close to a bunch of people. Stan White was in this bunch. My daughter swears up and down she heard him say it. I don't know the fact. But someone said, you know, if he gets elected, what's he going to do with his wife? You know, that's two. That's strike two, okay? I protested right out in front of the city hall, came in here, did my thing, didn't get any kind of apology. I still would stake my life that it happened, but still didn't get any apology. Basically, I just went on. We went on. I have never done anything to Stan White in person. If I have, I wish he'd come right up here and tell me what I've done in front of everybody, because I do not know of one thing I have done against Mr. White. All right? I'm just telling you guys this so you know what you've got on your committee. All right? Along with that deal, my little protest and stuff, Mr. White proceeds to tell Star-Telegram that he really doesn't like somebody questioning his morals, integrity. I forget the exact word, can't find the newspaper clipping. Well, I can understand that, you know. Take up for yourself. See, we come down to October now. Mr. White repeats the mistake of 1988. This is what you guys have got on your board, okay? What you guys are fixing to have studying the ethics committee, okay? Ethics, whatever you want to call it, all right? Like I said just a few minutes ago, I went down last week and signed up. One more year of softball. I've got a little girl starting right back there. We're going to start all over again with her. Probably be another 10, 12 years coaching with her. If I'm not right, and I fill all the papers out, I don't believe Stan White would even be allowed to coach a girls softball team. But he can sit on our charter review committee, which is more important in the overall picture of Haltom City. A charter review committee or a little girls softball team? Somebody answer me. Which one would you say, just off the top of your head, which one in the overall picture of Haltom City future would be the most important? Mr. Henseling, which one would just...
No, I tell you what, I decline to get involved in this.
I'm just saying which one?
Well,
somebody answer.
I think...
All right, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
I do have, Councilmember Ownby does have his light on, and since...
Well, I'm just about down through to the last page, okay? In fact, that may be it. I do have one thing that was connected with the 1997 deal that was given to me by a teacher. Let me read parts of it. I'm through. This was dated Saturday, May 11th, 1997. Dear Bill, I just wanted to write you a note before coming to the car wash at your restaurant. Your generosity is overwhelming. There are not many people who put kids first like you do. You not only have said you put kids first, you have shown that you put kids first. I do not know a single person who on the day of an election would be helping kids raise money and instead of getting votes for themselves at the polls. It is amazing you're putting your own political agenda. Oh, well, I got lost. It is amazing that you were with kids, helping, cooking, spending your time and money instead of putting your political agenda first. That's my charity at home, okay?
I don't think anyone would deny the fact that,
that
you have...
somebody explain to me what charity begins at home as far as thrown at me would mean.
I'm going to ask Councilmember Ownby, allow him to speak, and then we will stop discussion. Councilmember Ownby.
Bill, I'm not going to sit here and try and translate charity begins at home other than to tell you that I know that charity and love are one and the same, and that nobody should tout it towards one person more than the other. It's not even questionable to anybody here in council about the countless amount of hours that you've worked. That's not a question. And I do know that we have told you many times how much we appreciated that.
But then you turn around and you appoint somebody to a council.
When we appoint anybody, whether it was you, okay, that was appointed, or whether it was Stan White or John Doe from the city, it was done in the right light for the right reasons, okay? And it was done with charity, okay, with love. Now, we give everybody in the city the opportunity not only to perform and perform well based off charity, okay, but in life, the opportunity. And if they fall once, you don't condemn them, you don't shun them forever, you give them another chance.
Right.
Okay? The problem I see here, okay, and like when you came before the council last time, that's the first wind I'd heard of it. Really kind of disappointed me that nobody calls me and talks to me so that I can
Okay,
talk to
okay.
both of y'all.
Can I answer part of that right there? It disappointed me that after I came down here 2 weeks ago, you didn't call me. I had a
Because I
pager
had no
number.
knowledge.
I had a pager number that I thought was yours. I paged it twice, never heard back. I do not know whether the number was right or not. It
You
was
got my
given
old
to
one?
me. I don't have your home phone. It's not in the phone book.
But the whole thing was, of course, as soon as I found out, it hurt me too. It hurts any time for any person here, not you, anybody in this room, for anybody to get hurt, because we care about everybody. And we try to keep personal battles out of the council. Okay, and right now, be honest, just to be real honest, the battle that y'all been waging for the last 5 years or better is a personal issue.
Well, it is a personal issue, and it is a battle, but it's a one-sided battle. I have done nothing to this man. He uses his charter review committee for the third strike. He gets up.
And I would agree with you wholeheartedly, but it's been given fuel from all directions, none of which were positive fuel, none of which were ever fruitful for the city or for you or for anybody else, including the other person, Stan. Okay? It's not done anything except hurt and defame everybody.
Exactly.
And if I had my way, I would have you and Stan sitting down with me and we'd be talking it out, because that's what to me sounds like needs to be done. I mean, yeah, apologies need to be made on things, and we need to get it to where everybody can run smooth, okay? Even down to coming in and finding out that there is an ordinance and a proper way to appeal or remove something.
Well, I was told, I went to talk to Mr. Quinones first, and he advised me there's probably some procedure you've got to follow.
Right. And
I
finally,
went directly across the street, talked to Mr. Eisen. He was at Mayor
Right.
Watkins' office.
And that's
No,
what I'm saying.
it wasn't told, nothing. I didn't get a
You found out
word.
at the same time we found out tonight. Okay, and letting you know that knows that we now know that there is a procedure and a process that we have to do. You wouldn't expect anybody to do it any differently. You'd want it to be
Exactly.
done that way.
You have to.
Okay? So, in response to that, if that's the answer, then that's the process that would have to be taken. Personally, and this is personal, not on council, because I have plenty of appointees, and Stan sat up on this council and did a lot of great things for us too. You've done a lot of great things without even being up on the council.
But I haven't stood there and insulted another
we need to-
citizen
what
over
we
and
need to
over
do,
and over
though-
and over and over.
What we need to do at this point, Bill, though, is put this to rest, and if that means you and me and Stan sitting down together and just getting the differences settled, that's fine. We need to not run it through the council anymore, because it's not helping the city in any way for you or for Stan to be trading anger and insults. That's not helping anybody. And I care for you and your family. I have never had a bad thought for you all.
No, in fact, I was gonna throw in, but I cut it just short as I could. Me and you ran against each other the first time.
Right. Right.
Nothing. There was no hard feelings one
Every
way or
election
the
we
other.
ever had, I'm down there at your place eating a burger. You and I run into each
Well,
other at the
you
donut
were
shop and
eating there
everywhere.
when the day you found out you ran, or you won the first time.
But I didn't say anything about it.
I ran against this guy last time.
Right.
You two, I don't have a bit of a problem with you. You both ran the kind of race I would hope everybody would.
Well, and of course, all I want y'all to do, and all I want everybody to do, is make amends, and get peace, and get on with doing the things for the city. And whatever we need to do that, that's what we'll purpose. Okay.
Okay. While I'm standing here, do you guys think that's the proper procedure for removing someone?
If this is the proper procedure?
Do you think that is the proper procedure?
I'm sure it is. If it's.
No, I'm talking about in your own mind. Do you think that is the proper?
Well, I'll put it this way. At this point,
To me, that looks like.
I'll give you my opinion of what the proper procedure is, not from the council, but from as a person. I would tell you that I'm supposed to confront the people that are having the problems and bring them together, and we're supposed to talk it out and see how that goes. And that's what I would tell you on my heart, if you ask. That's my answer.
Have you guys not considered any kind of ethics committee? An ethics policy that includes the committees, the chairman, the boards, everything other than, is that going to include everybody?
Government does everything they can, even down to the city government, down to each board and committee. We try our best to appease and please everybody that we can. and we're going to do all that we can, but we're human, we're going to make mistakes, and we have to try and rectify them, and that's all we can do.
That didn't answer my question.
And it will.
Are you going to include committees, boards?
It will apply.
Code of ethics will apply to all
It
of them.
will.
It will apply to the board. Yes, it will.
All right.
And, you know, I
Is it retroactive?
I know I've said this until everybody's tired of hearing it, but I always go back to, I think you're either born with it or you aren't. And it just doesn't matter how many pieces of paper are out there floating around.
Right.
If you're not an ethical person, you're just not an ethical person.
Well, you guys just, I know you say you realize how much I do. I don't think anybody really does, because I never really came out and asked for it. But you don't know how much it hurts to hear a wisecrack, verbal attack, whatever you want to call it, thrown in my face, because this is something I have worked for over 20 years to take care of.
No, I can't say that I really do completely understand, but because I've not been in that position. I can only presume to understand.
Right.
And I don't think anybody else up here can either.
That's it for me.
I would, I think it'd be a good idea what you suggested, Ed, if all the parties are agreeable. And thank you, Mr. Louthan.
Thank you.
Bill, I'll call you. I will call you tomorrow.
We are all here, so we have no excused absences. And pursuant, let's see, we have no executive session tonight, so we will adjourn at 10:10.